All right, guys, welcome to Small Towns Unscripted one more time for our 75th episode.
No.
Oh.
15th, I think.
I'm a real estate agent.
You
I never
posted
exaggerate.
15, I think.
Tara Chelan, Russ McClellan. Hello, John and Kristin Wall.
Hey, guys.
Friends for a long time, and I didn't know you guys didn't know each other, John and you.
Yeah, I mean, this is again, like, I know who he is, and I have met Kristin, but I do not,
Well, that's the whole thing, right, John and Kristin? We started this so we could help people. Two things, right? We started this so we could help people get to know each other in small town America instead of each other. And so often, I say this almost every time, but the format is kind of like, in a way that you guys know, I know somebody from high school, and in my head, they're still in high school, but it was 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. But they're still, the last time I knew them, this is what I think of. Or an industry, I might know somebody at work, and that's the only personality that I know is them at work. Mm-hmm. So, like, even just the other day, we had Les Hare, and I had no idea. Alan and Lisa were 1 year behind me, 1 year ahead of me in school, that he came here in the 70s, but I had no idea that he was a Navy jet pilot.
no idea.
No idea, and he did 3 tours in Vietnam.
Wow.
No idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
So it's like, whoa, that's
He
pretty
says,
crazy.
I love when people say this. I'll talk about it if someone asks me, but if they don't ask me, I'm not going to talk about it.
Right.
Well, if nobody knows about it,
Right.
how are they supposed to ask you about it? Les?
Yeah, that Vietnam's pretty interesting. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's one of the reasons. The other one is so your sphere, your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids that aren't born yet,
This is legacy footage, folks.
I mean, Tara's mom passed away, my mom and dad passed away, and I was thinking, like, it would have been cool if we would have had this for my grandkids and their great-grandkids, because they'll never really, that, especially that era, doesn't have a lot of stuff on tape.
Right.
So hopefully this is something that, those great-grandkids can get to know you a little bit by sitting down and watching.
You know what? Like, we have to take time out of our busy lives to do these stories, to talk to people. Mm-hmm. They have to take time out of their busy lives, but I feel like this is a big assumption. I feel like you work a lot.
Just a little.
Okay, and so you're not you're not my chiropractor.
Right.
So if we're not friends socially related, or you're not my chiropractor, how am I going to get to know you?
Right.
I mean, we're busy working. We're working. We're busy.
And
How do we know people?
And there's this, social media, I think, is a double-edged sword, right? So you have
Very much
a
so.
cesspool out there that's judgmental and,
Trolls, we call them.
throwing rocks from the bleacher seats, never putting on the stripes, that man in the arena stuff. I chose, with my social media profile over the last decade or so, I have a rule that there's nothing negative. There's no judgment. If you are, I just block you. And if you do it twice, I just forever block you.
Yeah.
I looked one time and I had like 150 friends that I blocked. Like, oops. But by doing it, it's positive, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is an avenue where technology can be beneficial. So, and we'll get into only 7 seconds, which I'm really curious about. Again, I know of it. I want to know more about it. But before we do that, why don't we start at the beginning? I know you grew up here. I knew your dad. So why don't you tell us where you guys went to? I know Chelan High School.
Yep.
What's your story? Where'd you grow up?
So my parents moved here from, my mom and dad, like yours, both deceased now. They both grew up in Seattle and moved here in 1970. And that was I'm so glad they did that, because otherwise I would have been a city kid, if I'd have lived, I remember when you're little, you have vague memories of certain things. And I remember we had a house in Edmonds, and I was probably, I still have some visions, of living there when I was 2 years old or 2.5 or whatever. But they moved here in 1970 because my dad got he was involved in the car business in the Seattle area for a lot of years, and he got the call from Ford to be the dealer in Chelan and to start the Ford dealership in
Chelan?
See, he didn't know Chelan had a Ford dealership.
I mean,
did
I
you?
kind of feel like I knew there was cars here, but I didn't know to that extent. I thought it was more like individual kind of mishmash.
Yeah.
My dad had told me Wally Hahn had a car dealership too.
Yeah, there was actually I believe a Pontiac dealership. that a guy named Myron Belshaw had, which was where the little Chelan mini mall is now, next to Starbucks there. That little that was actually a Pontiac dealership. Some other people that are more old timers than me may know a little more about that than me, because I was a little kid.
So where was this Ford dealership?
Ford dealership it's kind of ironic. It's right across the street from where my office is now on Wooden Avenue. It's where Jerry's Auto Supply is.
Okay.
No way.
And then the corner where Tin Lily is, which you know about the
Russ knows
restaurant.
about that
Russ
place.
yeah, you built it. That was actually.
I showed people what not to do.
Yeah, that was actually well, before my dad had the dealership there, that was a gas station.
Okay, that's what I thought.
You could kind of tell, but that corner, the building that's right next to Jerry's now, which is where the First American Title is, it's that 2-story building there.
Right.
That did not exist there, and the whole front of that building, there was that corner of Jerry's was a big bay door, which was a parts or body shop, and then there was another where the print shop is now was another body shop, and then the corner was the used car corner. So all the new vehicles were in the front, and then the used ones were around to the back to the alley.
You
there
have
where the
pictures of this?
unfortunately, I don't have a lot left over from my parents. I'm sure there's some, and I would love that. If anybody's listening to this and has old pictures, I would love to get a hold of those, because I've got a few things from the dealership there. But interestingly enough, and here's something you may not even know.
Here comes the nugget you didn't know, Kristin.
Dad was going to be there. There was 2 towns that Ford was going to put the dealership in.
Oh, it was a coin toss.
And it was Chelan and Cashmere.
Oh.
I could have ended up a bulldog, but instead I'm an old goat.
Wise choice.
Yeah.
So you grew up here then.
Yes.
I'll get back to that. So
Yep.
Kristin, where did you grow up?
I actually grew up the Met Howe, about 13, 14 miles. My great-grandparents came over in the late 1800s and homesteaded up the Met Howe. And my parents and brothers still live on the same piece of property.
Wow, that's cool.
And so I was, I hate even saying this, I was a Pateras nanny.
Nice.
Yeah. The old goat got the nanny. I mean, what do you?
That's perfect.
Yeah.
So you were 85, John?
I was 85.
And
yeah.
what year did you graduate?
90.
90.
Yeah.
Nice. So you grew you had Johnny Ellis and Mike Cole. And
Actually, I had my dad.
your dad.
My dad was the coach for the 4 years I played in high school.
Okay.
Talking basketball, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. And I had Mr. Hall, Mike Hall, for my 6th, 7th grade basketball.
Played on the Holes Hog softball tournament.
Yeah.
So we played basketball against each other,
Really?
actually. Because I graduated from Manson in 92.
Oh my goodness.
So who I remember from Pateras was
Lana Stennis.
Lana Stennis.
Yeah, that's my cousin. Yeah.
Of course it is.
Yeah. Because my maiden name was Stennis.
Oh,
Okay.
here we go.
Yeah. So didn't
Here's
Johnny
the
marry?
everyone's related. Here's the everyone's related part.
So Mark Stennis.
It's my brother.
Mark.
Oh wait,
Marg
there's
is-
Marg.
Mark Stennis. Isn't she married Johnny Ellis?
Yes.
Yes, now.
Yes.
Is that related to you?
Yes, kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of.
By marriage?
Yes.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her first husband.
Yeah, we did a podcast the other day and I had a cousin. I didn't know.
Yeah.
It was my cousin. Right.
Yeah.
So Lana Stennis
Happens.
allegedly dated Wyton Peterson, so everyone hated Lana Stennis.
Small towns.
Small towns. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Fighting words back
Yeah,
in
it
the day.
was like,
Yep.
oh, who's this girl thinks she is?
Who was it we had on this podcast that
Too funny.
who was it
Yeah.
that dated a Chelan girl? Was that Kevin Pratt? No, he went to Chelan High School, but he lived in Manson.
Yes.
And that was, I go, man, that must have been fighting words back in the day.
Oh,
and he goes,
yeah.
"Oh, there's a few people
No,
in there.
no,
Yeah.
Jim Wall,
Jim Wall? Yeah, that was
right?
another
He
interesting
lived
one.
here but went
PD
to
commissioner.
Chelan.
See, that's
Yeah,
the other
that's
thing.
right.
You guys had Jim and Judy on,
Yeah.
and a lot of people growing up through the years thought that
Everybody probably.
they were
That you're related.
and people would say, and then we can talk later, but my dad after the Ford dealership was Chelan County Commissioner for
Oh, well, that made it
16
extra
years.
confusing.
Jim
Yes.
was PUD Commissioner
Yeah.
for
Oh,
at least
boy.
that close time, and people
You
thought
guys
they were
really-
both commissioners. The name's almost the same,
Yeah.
and they thought, are they brothers? Is Jim your uncle? I mean, like,
Just
no,
say
there's
yes. Just say-
And the other thing that's interesting is the building that my dad had the Ford dealership in was owned by George Wall, who was Jim's dad. So my dad rented that building or leased that building from George, who people thought was his dad or his great uncle.
Of course.
It was just
probably
but
always
there was no relation.
Telling your dad, you got the good deal, you're related.
Oh yeah, a lot of people thought that. Yeah.
Well, that's funny. So your grandparents came from where in the 1800s? Like
Norway.
From Norway.
Yep.
That's pretty wild.
Not from the Midwest.
Yeah, no, they came from Norway and they homesteaded. And
I was going to say, because
became-
that's tough. That was like probably tough living cold and not a lot of resources, but they're from Norway, so
Norway.
they were no
It's
stranger to
amazing.
cold.
You think
I
about
know.
people that did that. They had no. I mean, their form of communication was sending a letter.
That took
That took maybe
Months.
months to get. I mean, they came
Yeah.
out from there not even knowing what to expect.
No,
mean,
I
they
know.
were
I
t-
can't
they were
even
tough.
imagine.
They
And
were
then came
tough.
out west, not knowing
Tough.
what to expect.
Was it
Yeah.
to get here
Stamps'
and then to get out here.
Yeah.
parents or grandparents?
Yeah, somebody. We had a guest that their
Stamps
dad,
came from
grandpa was on
Arkansas or Alabama?
on a railroad car. Like
And
at
they
16.
lived on Bear Mountain, and he said they like almost didn't make it because it was just
Maybe Otter Ross or something. We've had
So
some really
cold.
wild stories, and
Yeah.
and it's funny because we do see this a lot too, where we like couples will learn something, and if they maybe knew it once, they had forgotten. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that. So this is kind of reminiscing, and it's also fun to just get the source, from you guys, and like, so you are kind of older.
yeah. How'd you guys hook up?
Kind of like
there's a little bit of a spread
You were
here.
kind of out, weren't you? You must
Yeah,
have-
we did not know each other in
Well,
school.
sure.
There's
because
no social
obviously-
media back then,
no,
right?
that was
No, plus
and
like you would have been a senior when she was in 8th grade.
Yes, exactly.
7th grade probably.
7th.
Yeah.
So how did
Yeah.
you guys end up meeting?
You want to tell the story?
The PG
Which version is more accurate?
Well,
it's all PG.
where
It's good.
you graduated from Chelan,
I
like
did,
12 year
and-
senior, 13 year
Yeah, I went
senior,
to
whatever you want to
I grew
call
up
it.
because we moved here when I was 3, and so that's all I knew. And so went through, kindergarten at Morgan Owings, Chelan, the old Chelan High School, which to this day I still wish they never tore that building down. Was a beautiful building. But anyway, and then I went to Whitworth for my undergrad schooling, and then went on to chiropractic school in Iowa. Spent a little time in Montana doing a little internship there in Kalispell, and I came back after that and was just kind of traveling around. I had passed the state boards for Washington, and I thought, I almost stayed in Montana because the time I was there, like I hear happens to a lot of people, you fall in love with Montana.
I mean, Kalispell sounds beautiful.
I did, and I almost stayed, and I was like, but I've already taken the Washington boards. I was always planning on practicing in Washington, and I came back and I spent a couple of months just going different parts of the state trying to figure out where I wanted to be, actually on the west side of the mountains, and I was actually this close to opening up a practice in Monroe, believe it or not. And at the time, it's interesting, there were 2 chiropractors in Monroe in 1990. Somebody may correct me on that, but and I think now there's like 25 or something like that, because Monroe just exploded.
Yeah, it
too.
sure did.
Yeah, and I was working with this real estate company to lease this office space, and I mean, they had drawn up the contract.
Oh,
and
you
I
were
was,
all in.
I was, yeah, and this place, and then
And you're a single guy at this time?
at the time single. Yep, I went there, and I there was something, and I had the contract, and I sat there, and I'm looking at the contract to sign this lease. No income, no money. And I was just like, and I always like to say, it's with my Christian faith, it was the Holy Spirit that just gave me that stop,
Yeah.
And I remember putting the paper down, and I said to the lady, I said, I can't sign this. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, well, there's a couple things in here that I just don't think are going to work for me. And I got up, I told them thank you, and I walked out the door, I got in my car and drove back over the pass, and I'm thinking, now what? And I came back to that, it was around Christmas time, and I came back to Chelan, and I was at one of the basketball games. They had this Christmas tournaments, and I ran into Hank Harvey, who he at the time owned Harvey's Furniture, which is where the Lake Life building is
Yep.
now in Chelan. And I I'd known Hank, and of course I know Marcy and his daughter and Bill.
Well, you'll have to watch the
Nichols.
Bill Nickel podcast.
Is he on? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to. Yeah, Bill, they're great people. But
He was fun.
and Hank says to me at this, we're talking at the basketball tournament. He goes, you should. He goes, we're closing the furniture store. He goes, you should open your. We'll clean out a part of the building, and you should open your practice here. And I was like, what? Well, that's what happened.
That's what
Easy
you did.
peasy.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and I
That's
didn't
awesome.
think that was going to happen, but it did, and I would, now I look back, I wouldn't have it any other way, and so that led to me being here, and she was working at a restaurant, which is in the Riverfront Shops. It used to be called River Park Dining. I don't know if you remember that fellow named Jim McMahon.
Didn't he own was that JR's?
It's JR's now, or
Yeah,
what
or
was
was that,
yeah,
or-
it was
yeah, it was.
JR's, yeah. But before that, and
Yeah.
that's where we met. You can continue the story if you want.
So I graduated from
Yeah.
Pateros.
Yeah.
Ended up going over to Seattle, going to Northwest College and playing basketball. Little podunk
Nice.
Christian college, but it was a blast.
She actually played college basketball.
Yeah, we
It's
actually
pretty cool.
won national
Yeah.
championships
Yeah.
for a little. It was a
For
blast.
Christian
It was
college,
so
yeah.
fun.
That's great.
And then
Yeah.
I ended up coming home for the summer and was waitressing. I think it was my third summer waitressing there. And his parents, I had waited on them for,
They used to
2
go there all the
summers
time
before.
and have lunch,
and they always talked about their 3 sons and wanting to set me up. But because I was a cougar and they were huskies,
Yeah,
they were
well,
like, I don't know about
Yeah.
this. And,
Yeah.
and then, anyway, we kind of got set up on a blind date.
Oh, there you go.
How'd they pick which
And-
son?
Well, he was home. And it was,
Convenient one.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's a good thing.
Yeah.
'cause-
Roll the dice.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's all
And
good.
so then we met June 28th
Oh,
of
she knows the date.
1991.
There you go.
And I came home and I told my parents I met the man I'm going to marry.
Just
And
like that. Took me a little longer to figure it out, a little
we got
slower,
married
but
6 months later on
You're a
December
man. We'll give you
28th.
that.
I did.
Now, did you grow up in with strong faith in?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you
We both did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, she had said that you weren't going to date anybody who.
Well, I wasn't
Well,
Looking.
Right.
I
And neither was I. I was
like,
I
yeah.
got to get my practice started. I'm not
Yeah,
interested
you're on your
in.
single track of
Yeah, I've got to
getting
get
this going.
this going,
Yeah.
and
So he literally, I came
Yeah.
into his life before he even opened his practice.
it was like 2 weeks. Well,
Yeah.
I had seen a few pages. It was
Yeah.
right around that time,
Yeah.
June of '91. Yeah,
Yeah.
was when I opened the practice. Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's kind of like the true romance story.
Yeah.
And,
Or we were just ridiculously
we were
stupid and naive.
naive. Yeah, I think you look back at that, and then
Yeah.
we had
And then we kind of got pregnant on the honeymoon.
really
Oh.
quick. Yeah,
Which,
that happens.
yeah.
yeah.
Sure did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Holy
just-
Spirit
I
working
just
again.
Yeah,
heard
that's
that
right.
story.
Yeah,
Works in mysterious ways sometimes.
yeah.
Boy,
It
John.
was
Yeah.
pretty. Yeah, yeah.
All right.
But,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, okay.
Not
so,
an easy way to start a marriage,
No.
honestly.
No,
No.
I mean, no.
No.
Because you're young and you're thinking this and you're thinking that. And
Yeah.
then it's like,
I'm trying to
oh,
think, how am I going to provide for not just, my wife and me, but now a family, and then I was just starting literally, and that was those first few years were
so that was 91.
Really hard.
91.
92.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Yeah,
92.
my daughter and
92, yeah.
was it your son?
Yeah. Luke.
Or born in 92?
Yep.
Yeah.
October of
Luke, yes.
92.
Yeah.
So Grace and I got pregnant magically in college, and
Happens.
happens.
surprise.
And now I have
Yeah.
a 20 years. How old is she? 32?
32.
32.
Yeah.
Yeah.
32.
Yeah.
32.
Yeah.
That's good. So let's talk about your. You were an athlete too. You
Tried to be.
football, basketball. Did
Yeah.
you play baseball? I couldn't remember.
I didn't play basketball either. I played
Oh, you didn't?
football. Yeah,
So
I
David
foot-
played basketball.
David, my brother, played basketball and he was a good basketball player. You probably played.
I played against him,
some.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I played
It
football,
was
and
good.
usually after the football season was over, I would just take the winters and rest my body and recoup and lift and run. And then in the spring, I did track for 1 year and tennis for 2 years. So that was kind of my sports. And then in college, I did intramurals, and that was
Sure.
almost more fun than the actual
Yeah.
high school sports.
Yeah, that's what we did. I played
Yeah.
at Wenatchee, and then at Central we did our basketball team from Wenatchee. Most of us went to Central, but didn't play
Yeah.
on the team.
Oh.
We played on our own intramural squad,
Right.
so we won the championships
Yeah.
at Central. 'Cause
Yeah.
we were the same. We had like the camaraderie.
Intramural college sports are fun.
They're a blast. Yeah, because there's no I don't know. There's no pressure really.
There's
I mean,
no
you just
pressure.
go out and it's just.
There's no
they're-
pressure.
I was playing
Yeah.
Tecmo Bowl football, and you know,
remember that.
remember
I
Tecmo Bowl,
remember Tecmo Bowl.
Yes.
and intramurals, and then I was a dad. I was like, whoa, this is interesting. And then I went to business, and then I was married, and then I bought a house, and then
Yeah, away you went.
away we went.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's when you look back at those early years too. I had the same. I don't even know what I was thinking. Like 7 decisions in a row that were just like. I remember Frank Phelps and Desiree. I don't think they were married. I think, but I had this idea. I was living in Spokane. I was going to buy 80 acres in Idaho, and it was 3 miles on a dirt road. So I had a 6-month-old kid, and back then you could just divide it. Now it was like
Right.
2-3 miles north of Silverwood, but
Right.
Silverwood hadn't really developed yet.
Right.
And I told Grace, I'm like, yeah, we can do this. And she's like, how are we going to get, like, you know, it snowed a lot back then. It snowed 6 feet that year.
Wow.
And we had this, we went from this pretty good sized house to a 400 square foot house
I
on
think,
80
you know,
acres.
Maybe she should have
Cabin.
talked to Kristen's grandparents.
And I remember, I remember Frank and Des coming over
Great
there.
grandparents.
Great grandparents.
Yeah.
Yeah, how'd you do it?
And Frank looks at me and he goes, what are you doing?
You're out of your
You're
mind.
going to die. Frank is, you know, like, you're going to die. I'm like, I'm going to buy a $400 snowmobile, Frank. It'll be good. Put the 6-month-old on the back. And luckily, that deal didn't go through. I had a vision.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's one of my good decisions.
it's a lifestyle choice.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think anyone would have died.
I was off-gridding before it was popular.
Yeah.
Not my idea of.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I live semi like that now.
Yeah, compared to where you were, for sure. So let's talk about, you guys started having kids early, so you ended up with 5?
4.
Four. Yeah.
Let's talk about them. Boys, girls.
Now Luke was our first, and I always kidded her because I said she was a teenage pregnancy, which she was because she was 19.
19.
Yeah, but she was 20 when Luke was born.
Yeah.
So,
My basketball career went.
You
Yeah.
think?
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
So one was challenging, and you thought, let's pop out 3 more.
Over
Yeah,
the course of a very long time.
it was
Oh,
between
okay.
about
It was-
11 years between our oldest
Yeah.
and our youngest, which
Yeah. I never
Yeah.
had 2 in diapers at the same time.
Which was a
which
huge
was really
thing.
nice.
Yeah.
So now you got intentional.
Yeah, well,
I
yeah.
guess it kind of, you
Kinda.
know.
That's another whole long story.
So we had Luke in 92, and then Emily was born in 95. and
Isaac
then-
was
and
99.
Isaac was born in 99, and Ethan was 2003.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we had boy, girl, boy.
Nice.
And it's really amazing. I marvel sometimes at and you would know too, having that difference in how different kids can be that come from the same set of parents, you know.
Right,
they're-
lived in the same
I mean,
home,
yeah,
had the
the-
same
the-
stuff.
But it's
yeah,
also
but
when Ethan.
yeah.
I mean, when Luke was in high school, it was MySpace.
that was
When
the
Ethan
first.
was in high school, it was TikTok. In
Yeah.
10 years' time, it went from.
things
So
changed.
it was parenting very different generations almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like I remember Mason when he got into the Marine Corps, because Taylor was a flamethrower. You know, she wants to know why. You know, she's in your business. She's now a doctor of audiology over in Bremerton. But when he got into the Marine Corps and then he got into his the aviation side of it, I said, you better tell your sister thanks. You know, they're 5 years apart. I said, because you became a very good Marine because you learned a long time ago you couldn't get a word in. Anyway, so you had a trainer, so that Marine drill sergeant had nothing on table.
Yeah.
Like, so kind of
Amazing how the birth order and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff just falls into,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
So let me back up just a little
Yeah.
bit. So tell me about what it was like for you guys as you reflect growing up in small town America here when when you were growing up. How would you describe it?
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I mean, you might agree with me, Russ. I thought that of course, I'm old now. But I think
not
that
old.
well, older. Yeah, I thought that the 70s and 80s were a great time to grow up. I really did. I mean, and I mean, maybe the kids now think this is a great time to grow up. I would not want to be a kid right now, personally. But back then, it was. I don't know. It just seemed like simpler in a way.
Well, 3 channels, dark
Yeah.
before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was
Rabbit ears.
That was
Yeah.
the. I mean,
No
I would
internet.
Yeah.
call that the end of the kind of
simpler
more
time.
unplugged
Yeah.
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 time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then everything got real plugged in.
Yep. I mean, it was. We had a television, and my parents were fairly. They were fairly strict with that. I mean, it was CBS, ABC, NBC, PBS, and then we'd watch ball games, some Monday Night Football, the whatever
Yeah.
games were on the weekends, and then occasionally we'd watch a movie, whenever it was kind of a big deal when Wizard of Oz and
Yeah, when they put a
20,000 Leagues
movie
Under the
on
Sea,
prime
that kind-
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I grew up too. It was
Yeah.
like whatever
Yeah.
Dad was watching.
Yep.
We sound old.
Yeah, we do.
And then Saturday
Yeah,
morning
I had to watch way
cartoons.
too much Lawrence Welk. I know that.
I did
Way
watch some of
too
Lawrence.
much
You
Lawrence
watched
Welk.
Lawrence Welk and your grandma's,
Yeah.
didn't you? That
Oh,
was yeah.
so much Lawrence
Yeah.
My
Welk.
mom loved that show, man.
Oh.
I was like, what's
So much Lawrence
Really?
Welk.
That's crazy.
But also good shows like The Muppet Show. I remember we got to watch that, and I thought, oh, this is fun.
Well,
Happy Days.
Little House on the Prairie.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was simpler, and I think it was kind of an end of a transition era, pre-internet. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
that was a big deal.
Yeah.
It's probably like having cars versus not having cars. I mean, there were some big moves
Yeah.
over time, but I remember Earl Stanford said, growing up here, he's 90 now, so he was in my dad's grade. He goes, "We were all broke. We just didn't know it."
Yeah.
And the one thing that we've talked about, which I thought Earl hit the nail on the head back then, is there wasn't cell phones, obviously, and there was very like 2 longs and a short was my dad's phone number, the crank thing, right?
Wow.
The party line. And
Yeah.
so at night they'd just be outside, right?
Yeah.
Whether they're working or playing, they're outside, and they'd have to go 4 or 5 miles to see their friends sometimes. And like they were talking about back up by Antelope where you live.
Yeah.
Now, and he said if it got dark or like a storm came in, it wasn't uncommon. Your kids just didn't come home, and there was no fear.
Right.
So I think trying to put when he said that, I was trying to put myself in that time frame, going, wait a minute, your kid's gone. You expect him home for dinner because if you came home before dinner, it's like, what's wrong with you?
Something's wrong.
like-
Yeah.
Or,
Get out of the house.
pull weeds now that you're
Yeah,
here.
no, I don't want to
Yeah.
come home. I'll have to work. So they didn't worry about it because they would they would get to whatever house they could get to, and they'd play too late or whatever as kids, and then they'd stay the night. They'd eat dinner at that house, and it was very open door policy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And I think that's the other thing. Like back then, if somebody knocked on your door, it wasn't weird.
No, I mean,
Right.
I didn't.
Right.
I was in a neighborhood in Bellevue, and it was the street lights came on. I had to be home. Otherwise, my parents really had no idea where I was.
Yeah,
I mean, they could get. I mean, they had to find me. I was either at the pool, the park, or maybe one of these 5 kids' house, or I was riding my bike somewhere. I mean, there's potential to find me.
And I think Bill
But
Nichols
not
said
like it is now.
Right.
Bill
Yeah.
said it best. He said it was perfect.
Yeah.
It was just perfect.
Yeah.
Growing up here, and he
Yep.
talked about when he was a
Yeah.
kid growing. It's just perfect. Like
Yep.
he had that.
I grew up. I mean, I lived in Chelan Falls, and some of the Chelan people back then thought Chelan Falls was kind of the the
Ghetto.
the ghetto. And but honestly, there was a number. I still Paul Hunter is a good friend of mine, and I ran around with him down there all those years, and we did that all summer long, and we'd be out and we would hear my dad. My dad had this whistle he could do, just that. I still have never been able to master it, but he would whistle. We could hear him from literally clear,
Wherever.
and it would be 10 o'clock at night. It would be getting dark, and we'd be like, oh, we better get home now. It must be, But we were out, and they didn't. We were all over the hills back
Yes.
there, down by the powerhouse, and it was just, there was a freedom in that, and we didn't care about. We didn't feel unsafe. We didn't feel like something bad was going to happen or anything. It was just a good time.
Really,
Yeah.
my son's 8, and I'm trying to find the balance between how I grew up and kind of how things are now.
It's so
Because
hard.
there's so much scheduling
Yeah.
that is going on with kids all the time, and I remember summer being the not really a schedule time,
No.
just days on days
It was a
of
hell of a lot longer.
It's
Yes.
well when you're younger.
Yeah.
It feels
play,
like
Yeah.
3
free
months.
Summer's
play,
so
free
fast.
play.
Yeah.
You guys think summer's fast now?
Oh,
Yes.
God.
And it was
Yeah.
long when we were
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
Is that because we just weren't on the earth that long, so we thought
Probably.
I mean, time is
Well, we
relative.
got out of school a little earlier than they do now, too.
Time
We're
is
out by
definitely a
the
relative
first
thing.
yeah.
Like when you're waiting for something, time is long, and when you're busy, time is fast.
Yeah, it was definitely a fun time to grow up for sure. So, did you find that in Pateros? Same.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
But I was like almost
Yeah.
15 miles out of town. So when I said goodbye to my friends in the beginning of June, I didn't see them again until September.
Really?
And so I was pretty much alone with my animals and
Yeah.
then raising my sheep for the fair.
Catching
and-
fish out of that river.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
fished. Yeah, so it was honestly kind of a lonely
Butchered
lonely
chickens.
time. I could not wait for school
Butchered
to
rabbits,
start.
butchered chickens.
Okay,
Oh.
yeah,
You
that was
did.
my life.
Yeah.
Yep.
You were.
Having trauma right now.
She was
Yeah.
a farm
I was
girl.
a farm
Yeah.
girl.
Now, do you have
Yeah.
chickens and pigs and?
No, but I want
We're
chickens.
thinking
Ooh,
about
yeah.
Our
Get
daughter
some
has
chickens.
chickens.
I
But
love my chickens.
that's
Yeah.
on the to-do
We
list.
allegedly have too many chickens in the city. I don't even know. I think we have 5 or 6. I don't know.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
I get a lot of eggs. My neighbors are good with it.
I don't remember
I
how
think you can have
many.
5,
Yeah.
and I think I might have adopted an extra one, just purely out of non-profit moment, helping the chicken live.
Yeah.
No, but it's fun. Yeah, we got two horses at Saddle Club too. So it's I grew up rodeoing with Greg and
Yeah.
Greg Ools and all
Oh,
that.
yeah.
You know, Desiree. You know.
Yeah.
Brody's getting his 2 meat goats for fair on Sunday, so we've
awesome.
kind of. Bellevue girl is entering this
Phase of-
4-H
yeah.
world.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Well, when you have to go to at slaughter, I wonder how he's going to do. What do you think?
Oh.
Well, he doesn't do that. The goat just leaves.
Oh,
He doesn't come home with us. He
Remember
doesn't
when your
sit.
Just a piece of advice.
don't
my
name him.
parents,
Remember when your brothers had pigs?
my parents didn't tell me that Toby wasn't coming home from
Oh,
the
he
fair.
knows fully.
I
He
did.
That's what I
had
was
to
trying to
decide.
ask. Yeah.
He had to decide if he wanted to do this or not. Yeah. Yeah. He knows what's going on.
And then so now you have 4 kids.
Yeah.
Yep.
How many grandkids now? 'Cause I go in your office, I see like
Yeah, the pictures
kids.
change
a lot of kids.
a lot, don't they? Yeah.
It's a collage of kids.
Yeah. We've got 8 grandkids
And one on the way.
and 1 on the way.
Ah,
Or
congratulations.
2 if it's twins.
Wow, you guys.
Ellie has twins. That'd be something. Yeah.
That's awesome. Don't quit your day job.
Wow.
It's
yeah.
awesome.
No.
He's
Yep.
he's Grumps.
Yep.
That's what the grandkids call
I'm
him.
Grumps. She's Mimi.
No,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
perfect.
That's
So
the best.
Well, you have probably
That's
the most
cute.
picturesque, photogenic family I've ever seen in my
Aw,
life.
thank you.
You guys
Thank
are,
you.
Like you're all just like,
They're
you guys
so-
actors.
they're
Yeah.
so cute.
Yeah. We're fortunate
There's-
that we have, 2 of our kids and their spouses and 5 of the grandkids that live in the area.
They
And
live
so
within 2 minutes,
Yeah,
so we,
so-
we still live
Yep.
life
We
together.
get to do a lot
We
of
do
life.
dinner.
That's so
Yep.
great.
Dinner
Yep.
a few times a week typically, and
Yep.
we have
Fantastic.
T-ball tonight and
Yeah.
T-ball tomorrow night.
Oh yeah. Talk about scheduling with 8
Yeah.
grandkids, 9, 10 grandkids. You're gonna be
It's
busy,
it's a different type of scheduling though as a grandparent.
Yeah, we get to
Like,
choose.
going to games. It's a different perspective. Watching a game, even if they are just t-ball or little
Yeah.
league or whatever, watching it from a perspective as a grandparent, then as a parent, you just kind of like, oh, this is nice, this is pleasant, and no matter what's going on, you don't get
You're
too
not yelling at the
excited.
refs quite,
That's right. You
quite
just-
yet.
We haven't hit high school sports.
Yeah,
Well,
in time.
not
in
yet.
time, in time. That's
Yeah.
fun. Well, it's a lot. It's a lot of fun to watch your family. And then, John, you've been 35 years? And
June will be 34 years, in practice.
So I started
yeah.
I got licensed in '89 while I was in college.
Yep.
So
We're pretty close.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
been in real estate 35,
Yeah,
which is weird.
yeah.
Also, and you've managed to not hire employees.
I've had them in the past. The first several years I did.
You did in the beginning. Huh?
Yep, and
I attempted to help you a
You
couple
did some,
times,
yeah.
but every time I
but
ended
it
up
was
pregnant.
I've just been able to I kind of developed a plan with the
Sorry,
business to be able to
sorry.
do it without that. Now I mean I've had people say, oh, you could have somebody or 2 people and
Sure.
see more patients, but I see a significant number of patients, but seeing huge volumes has never been my.
So did you know that
Cool.
early on in your business? Like you didn't want, I'm going to be franchising my practice.
I
I'm
didn't,
going
I
to.
didn't ever want to do that. I consider my patients as friends,
Friends and family,
and family and people I know, and I laugh with them, I cry with them, I hear stories. I have, I've shared hard times with a lot of them, and really, really good times with a lot of them. And that's part of
Yeah, I'm
and
one
I'm
of
part
them.
of the yeah, you are exactly. You're and
You're amazing at that job. You're so like peaceful. You have that gift, that calmness, and he does it with everyone. That's the crazy gift, because you can do it with some people, some personalities. What you're very good at is
You're gonna make me emotional here, Russ.
There's Kleenex right there.
that's my goal.
No,
You don't know
well,
me yet, huh?
I
30 years later?
I don't know. I always felt like that my office is it's my ministry. It's where and I want my patients to, when they come in there, to feel
Like
comfortable.
community.
Yeah, comfortable and
Safe place.
a
Safe.
a safe place and
Well, and that
that's-
certain amount of
yeah.
counseling or listening maybe is the best way to put it when there's things going down, whatever it is. That has to be hard on you. It has to be like, wow.
Yeah, it is.
I didn't know if I signed up for this one.
Yeah, it takes its toll sometimes, and obviously I can't talk about specific people with privacy stuff, but it's some nights. I mean, she would tell you, I come home and I'm just like, it was a tough day, because.
Has it helped you? And you're not without challenges in life. Life has hit you guys. Life hits everybody. Do you sometimes find it like inspirational in a way? Like, I'm really grateful for what I have.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm extremely thankful. I wouldn't. I mean, like you said, making a whole lot of money and having a huge practice was never a motivating factor for me. I mean, I enjoy what I do. I mean, and to me, when somebody comes in and then the next time they come in and they said, I haven't felt this good since years. That's to me, that's what it's all about.
I love how exciting you
Yeah,
get when you get
yeah.
that adjustment.
Yeah.
And it works after it hasn't worked for a while.
Yeah,
Like, you're so
it's-
stiff,
yeah.
and then it's like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like making a three-pointer.
Yeah, it is. It's
Yeah.
It is kind of. I guess that is my three-pointer. It's like, yeah.
That's fun
But
to
but
watch.
it is a. I'm tremendously blessed. I have the greatest wife. I've got kids, and grandkids. I my cup runneth over. Truly. I mean.
All back to that Holy Spirit Monroe. Good,
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
call.
Good call.
Yep, I think
Good
so.
call.
Yep, I think so.
Sometimes.
Yep.
Well, so you've been there, and you're at that building right next to Wells Fargo, North Cascades Chiropractic. So that's where you go. All right, Kristen.
You're up.
Raising
Batter up.
kids, and what else have we been doing? Have you been raising kids the whole time? Did you have another? I know now you're doing only 7 seconds, so I want to get into that deep. But from going back to 1991, like waitressing and then college.
So then I was full-time mom.
Great.
And
We homeschooled our kids. When I say we,
I'll just
I was pretty much the superintendent. She was the driving force. I mean, literally.
That's a lot
there's
of
some
work.
lot.
beauty about small towns, and there's hard stuff about small towns.
Yes.
And our kids, our kids came out of the womb very bright because they came from him. And so we were kind of limited schooling wise. And
Again, this was back in the 90s. It was different.
yeah.
Different era.
And,
yeah.
Luke started reading at 3, so then what do you do with a kid like that? And so we really felt like we had no option other than homeschooling. It wasn't,
Was that to a certain grade, or was that all the way
they
through?
went all the way through.
Did they participate in the school activities or sports?
Yeah.
We were all over the place. That was kind of, we're in Pateras. We ended up,
But then we did stuff in Chelan and Wenatchee.
yeah, I
and
mean, we did T-ball in Chelan, and then we did swim. Our kids ended up swimmers,
Oh, really?
which is so funny because I didn't even know what the butterfly stroke was as a mom, and so
Did
they
that in
all
Brewster
ended
for a
up,
while, and then a
Twisp.
Twisp. Yep.
And then we actually there wasn't, homeschooling was not a thing back then. I mean,
Yeah.
so I felt like the lone homeschool mom in the area.
No, I mean, when I grew up, homeschool kids we thought were weird.
Weird. Yeah, there are those.
Yeah.
You know?
Some
Just
pretty weird
being
kids
around,
in
there are
school
some-
too. so.
Yeah.
You know, it was
Yes.
like homeschool.
Weird doesn't
Yes.
discriminate.
Me too. That's what I was
Yeah.
like, oh dear, what am I doing to my kids?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then now it's like, oh, homeschool, and there's the pods, and there's
Yes. Oh, yeah.
It's
and
incredible.
you can travel, and it's
Oh
like,
yeah, and that was a gift for us. It was it's a lifestyle. I mean, it is a huge. It's a sacrifice and a commitment, and I was all in.
She was.
And
she
so-
had schedules and
I know. I was a
she's
little
she's
bit
a
type A.
schedule.
A little bit too type A. I've had to apologize to my kids.
Yeah.
But
it worked.
our
It
three
worked.
kids who have kids are all homeschooling their kids.
Interesting.
Oh,
So then that has to
seriously?
say something that I didn't mess them up that bad, right?
Right.
I was
So-
along those lines. It was kind of interesting because sometimes during that time in the 90s, I would get patients that would come in the office, and that something would come up about that, and I would say, "Well, we're homeschooling the kids," and it was interesting because some of the people, especially like older generation people,
Had like a visceral response.
oh yeah, you could just feel it coming out of them sometimes, and they'd get quiet, and then of course I'd wait for the knee jerk.
Social.
Well, what about their social? And I'm
Yeah.
like, and pretty soon I
Yeah,
got to the
what
point.
is the rebuttal?
Pretty soon I was just like, well, yeah, we don't believe in them socializing. We just leave them in their closet. They don't get out and see any other kids. I'm like, yeah. But anyway,
Our kids are quite social.
You looked at that book years ago. I'm sorry, we're booked for
no, but
8
that
months.
was people didn't know. I mean, that a
course.
lot of that generation, it was a complete.
No. It was a spotted owl in
Yeah,
homeschooling.
yeah.
I think the beauty,
Yeah.
one of the beauties of homeschooling is your kids are not all with their peers all the time.
Yeah.
And so they learn, to get along with younger and older and have those
That's an
conversations
awesome
with
point,
with everybody, which is a really beautiful thing.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's awesome, and
Yeah.
and look at the results, right?
Yeah.
So, talk to me about when you were inspired to, and how that came about, and what Only 7 Seconds is.
Yeah.
I'm very curious
Well,
about
so-
like the inside scoop.
Well, I guess I can start
You
with.
can start with your.
Well, 2009, I kind of I think, I had gotten married, had kids. My life was my kids, and we went through quite
you kind of had a burnout
huge,
phase.
well, we
yeah.
had a huge battle. Our daughter had severe health issues she was born with, and then other stuff. And I hit burnout. Like, I went into a pretty deep depression in, 2008?
2008, 2009, right? in
yeah,
there.
like really low. And I've always said that it was kind of cool, but I ended up really not even feeling like I knew myself other than just being mom, wife.
Wife to me,
Yeah.
mom to the
And
kids.
he worked a lot and
Had to.
had to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, it's a very long story, but I ended up getting into photography. And I've said that photography is what brought healing to my life.
did.
Like, it was something that brought me joy. It was right when Facebook was starting. And so, of course, you post your pictures on Facebook. And one thing led to another of like, will you take my daughter's senior pictures? And then it ended up doing wedding photography. And our daughter was 16 at the time and going through a health battle. And she ended up being my second shooter at all the weddings, and it was kind of the highlight.
To be able to do that
Yeah,
together was
and
cool.
so
Yep.
from 20
Plus, they're very good photographers too.
well, if I
Yeah.
look back at that time, ugh.
Well, yeah, but yeah.
So from
get better.
2009 to 2015, photography was my, business, and I loved it. And it wasn't full time, but ended up shooting weddings, and what a beautiful place to shoot weddings.
Yeah.
So Emily took over full time 2014-15, and she's still shooting here. How many years later? She's been shooting for 16 years, and
Wow,
still
that's great.
passionately loves it.
Okay, well that's cool.
Yeah.
Now we're the bachelorette capital of the world, so we got all kinds of
Is it actually considered that? She does not do bachelorette parties. But I still second shoot with her now, and I'm exhausted. We call them wedding day hangovers on Sunday. I come home and I'm like,
Yeah.
but
It's definitely a younger person's
job.
job.
Did you ever run into those bridezillas and the
You know what?
mother-in-laws and the?
We have had in all the years, because I think this is our 16th summer, we've had one. We have been so blessed.
Yeah.
That's
And,
amazing.
and that even turned out okay. But
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah,
so
it's a stressful time.
from that, I ended up starting a nonprofit. It was actually nationwide, kind of in the photography world. It was faith-based. And we had a home on our property, and where girls would come fly in. And
Wow.
I think we had over 20 workshops there from 2015 till COVID. And then we lost funding during COVID.
So could you elaborate on what that?
So
that
yeah,
was?
it was started in April of 2012 in Leavenworth, and so we would have a once-a-year retreat with 25 young women, and then I would have 10 leaders that would fly in that were. It started photography mainly, and so those
Like
were
creative arts. Kind of
and then
was,
then it
was-
kind of morphed
yeah.
into creative arts. So it would be painting and graphic design, and it was a lot for creative entrepreneurs that didn't have the bent to go to college but wanted a career in something that was more creative. And so from that we ended up doing these workshops. We gutted this house. It was called Delight and Bee, and the house on our property was called
cool.
The Delight House.
The Delight House.
Yeah.
And so in 2018, this is getting into how we got into Only 7 Seconds. In 2018, Ethan he ended up
Was he a
graduating
sophomore?
a year early, so I
Yeah.
can never figure out the date or what he was at that point. But
He was 15 years old,
was
mid-teen,
it?
yeah.
Yeah.
somewhere
He
there,
ended
yeah.
up, he was my only kid who played basketball, and I was so happy.
Yes,
He
I
had a
can
pretty
see
good
it.
high school basketball career
Yeah.
for,
And
He
they
did,
won
yeah.
district championship, district championship,
Yeah.
and that night he came home and got really, really sick. And
What did he have? It was like
he had pneumonia.
Pneumonia, that's
Yeah.
right, yeah.
And so he, you know, he had lived for this moment of, they
Going to
won
regionals
district,
or-
and they had
yeah,
a good
yeah.
chance of going all the way to state, and we don't get there very often in Pateros. They did this year though; it was awesome. The girls did,
Girls did,
yeah. And he ended up bedridden for like 22 days, like
my
super sick. So
Yeah,
he
he was
missed,
sick,
yeah,
yeah.
he missed regionals, and he was really depressed. Just watched him just go into a funk, and he kept saying to me that first week, he's like, "Mom," he's like, "I haven't heard from any of my friends," and I was like, "Well, they're just busy because they're heading to regionals and." Our house, I always told John, I said, I just want our house to be the house that everyone feels safe. I just want it to be a home where anyone feels welcome. And after we went through the fire in 2014, and our house was spared
Miraculously.
and everything
yeah.
around pretty. And I said, our home is an open home. Anyone can come. And I don't know how many people we had under our roof that year. I did hit burnout.
We had the Thanksgiving of 2014, we had like 50 people in our house, and,
Oh my
and
gosh.
It was pretty insane.
people that had lost their homes from the
Yeah,
I
we
remember
had-
I was there. I was
Yeah.
volunteering at they had all that stuff at the
Yeah.
gym.
at the
Yeah.
relief center there.
We had
There's,
we had trailers in our driveway with
Yeah,
people living, and
yeah.
it was a year just crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the first week I kind of made excuses for his friends. I said they're just busy. But
Because there were nights they would come. I'd come home from work, and she'd call me before I left. She's like, "Well, we got 6 kids at the house tonight
Yeah.
for dinner," and
It's just I loved it.
I'd get home and
I
they'd be
miss-
yelling
I
in the
miss it.
basement
I
playing
really miss it.
Xbox.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah.
It was a good.
I love
good
those
thing.
boys.
Yeah, yeah.
Love them.
Yeah.
And so then by the second week, I was getting angry. I'm like, come on, guys. I'm like, I can see you're on Instagram. I can see you're on social media. And you're like, not even stopping to check in on your friend. By the third week, I was actually really sad. I'm like, these are great young men, like amazing young men. They're just not thinking.
They're
They're
16-year-olds,
and it would have,
yeah.
and it would have made all the difference in the world to this kid who, we were talking about time. When you're sick in bed, 24 hours is a really long
Yes.
time. Day after day after day after day. And so I said, Ethan, how long, we were just kind of joking around, but I said, how long would it take, to send a simple text that says, how are you, you're just checking in. And he's like, it would take 3 seconds. And I'm like, well, it take, 10 seconds for me or however. And he's like, so I ended up doing what I've called it a mama bear rant on Facebook. It really wasn't really a rant, but I compared it because I got mono my junior year, and I ended up same exact scenario how many years before, and I missed, I think I went to districts. Well, it was February 14th I got diagnosed with mono. I missed the rest of the school year because it was a really long health battle.
Gosh.
But I had teachers that came to my house up the Met House, 15 miles up the Met House, that would bring me my test scores so that I could actually, keep up. I had a friend who literally wrote hand with all the gossip, small town or is it small
What
school.
was going on?
She would write me like little, keep like
Oh,
little
like you're not
journal.
going to believe he
Yes.
broke up with blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then he wouldn't ask so-and-so. And then,
Yeah, those.
Okay.
And so I would get these letters from her. I had one of my teammates who I wasn't really close with, drove all the way to Wenatchee and bought me like, sweat outfit, and drove all the way up the Met House and brought me, a new outfit. And like these things, and I'm like, we had no technology back then. Thank
Yeah.
heavens we didn't have party lines at that point, but like,
yeah.
there was no communication back then in comparison to what we have now.
Right.
And so I'm like, here we have access to more communication, ways of communicating. I mean, there could have been Instagram Messenger. There could have been
So many.
Oh yeah.
15 different
Yeah.
ways that someone could have made contact with Ethan, and nothing. And so that was kind of the moment
It only
where
takes
things,
7
and I
seconds
said
to
it only
send a
takes 7 seconds to
text,
reach out
yeah.
and send a text. And so
Yep.
when I started it officially back in 2019, the actual mission statement was about fighting isolation. And then COVID happened. And so then it just,
That's pretty serendipitous.
Yeah.
yeah.
Isolation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. And so then, I didn't have like a huge strategic plan. I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. It really, my big dream was to see, the only 7 seconds logo on a Jumbotron at Martin Stadium and Husky, Stadium, just where people would have the recognition of like, only 7 seconds. Oh yeah, I need to stop in.
Just a little reminder.
Just a reminder to check in. So that was my heart behind it. And then it just kind of has taken off.
Well, it seems like, again, that Holy Spirit for you guys. The path of the kids and what COVID did to kids, I can only imagine created a massive amount of depression.
Yeah.
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 Specifically those kids that are really, really focused on their identity being associated with sports or associated with, their friendships and
Yep.
and parents working, and then what are you doing all day? And so did you find that that just kind of blended and fueled this? Because I think you would know way more than I, but I think the ramifications and the side effects of COVID are still very,
they're
very
still
alive and well.
with us. Yeah.
I feel like this past year kind of came to a peak, honestly. Like that's,
Really?
I just feel like people have just kind of numbed. Like there's just something.
Well, you see
Yeah.
it, and I don't, in the beginning I thought it was younger, like you look at work ethic, and it's like you don't know what you don't know. It's like those kids didn't know what they didn't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to call, I'm not going to call. That's, it wasn't like that. They just weren't aware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think that with balance and work, I thought it was just a younger thing, but I think it spread to an ideology that is not healthy.
Right.
And it's a symptom, I think, is, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. The symptom is I don't want to work. That's what I, like in real estate, that's what I see. I see people that just, they will sabotage. They just won't work. And I'm like, this isn't working out for you. Your truck's getting repossessed. Like you're
Like
getting
it's
kicked out of your apartment.
self-sabotaging.
Yeah.
So-
And so they're like, well, I need a work-life balance. And I'm like, so how does this work for you? You don't get paid unless you
Yeah.
work. And
Yeah.
I had one person, a younger person, say I needed 6 hours. She needed 6 hours of daytime television to stay not depressed. I went, I don't think real estate is the right career for you.
Yeah.
That's you
And
need to get
I
paid for
think there
time.
might be a healthier
Yeah. So
way
So-
than 6 hours of TV.
yeah, probably. So I'm just saying, like, there's so many things that I see that have manifested themselves into a lot of people, not just the youth. And I don't know. I for a while I thought, oh, maybe it's helicopter parenting compared to what we had, or maybe it's everybody got a red ribbon for
I mean,
a while.
I think it's a recipe, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah. And it's hard to pin down. I was just curious what you guys think of, if you think any of this stuff is related. Or if you even know, if you see what I see.
I do see what you're saying. And I don't know, maybe the ripple effects from COVID and the isolation and that has, and then the whole thing with, being addicted to electronics and media,
And
electronic
screen.
media,
Yeah.
and screen time. I mean, I saw some time ago that there's more people. They spend more time on screen time than they do sleeping now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And it's like that is
Unless you're watching Small Towns Unscripted.
right,
and that's
exactly.
okay.
But it's yeah.
Then you just
Yeah.
better make it 8 hours.
But
a
I
day.
know, and so I don't know if that's if some of the. I think if I understand what you're saying, a lot of that has kind of caused this.
Well, it's like the capacity of
Yeah.
people froze,
Right.
where
Yeah.
I'm just not going to take on anymore.
Right.
Well, like you're saying,
And didn't
where you
re-engage.
had mono and you missed out on these events,
Right.
and your son missed out on these key events. I
Right.
mean, those kids that were in high school and had these dreams,
That's huge.
or things
know.
that they had always
Yes.
looked forward to, and it
Yep.
was their senior year, or it
They
was
never got their prom. They
Yeah,
never got
yeah,
their state
yeah.
basketball. They never got those
Yeah.
things.
Well,
I think
it's-
those people were impacted. Like my
Yep.
son was in preschool, and he can look
Yeah.
back at pictures and say, "Why are we wearing
Yeah.
masks?"
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it didn't.
Right.
Well, there's something psychological
Hit
about
him.
that too.
That
The
is.
government
Yes.
telling you what
Yes.
to do.
Yeah.
But
And you're
not
doing
when you're
it like
4.
no,
Right.
but for adults and all people, when
Yeah.
they're told what to do,
Yeah.
comply or else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a weird
Yeah.
place to be.
And
Yeah.
then be given money.
Especially
a
in
lot
this-
of people were
especially in
given
this
money.
country.
And then giving money, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
did
I-
the numbers, the analytics, the suicide rates, is there analytics that you can show that it went way up?
So I have a couple of thoughts. I think that it's COVID. I mean, I think it's the after effects of COVID, but I think it's screens more than COVID, personally.
Comparing your inside to somebody else's
And that
Yeah.
they
filtered
just
outside.
COVID kind of just induced more screen time.
Yes,
but it's
and
the
I
screen time.
think that there's scientific studies that it alters our minds. I mean, our brains are completely, and it's pretty scary, honestly. But I mean, we even as adults probably are not good role models for the younger generation either.
We need
So
to try to be.
Yes.
Or try
Yeah.
to be better for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I agree.
But I feel
Yeah.
like there's so much information overload out
Yeah, I
there,
agree.
and you can choose how you want to spend your time. But I feel like the two thoughts I had was, we have extremely hardworking kids. John and I are both pretty driven. And so they come by it naturally, to the point where I actually see one of our kids, I'm like, you need to actually get on your phone and just check out. No, I mean, I wouldn't recommend.
Well, but we were raised with that. I mean, my
Right.
parents, probably
Hard work.
much like your parents, were.
Hardworking.
It was like
You work.
if you want something good in life, or you want to buy something or do something, you work to get it. You work.
Yeah.
You work hard to you set that goal, or you and you don't. It's nothing's given to you.
Time on task over
Yes,
time.
nothing is given.
Nothing is given to you, and I still think that's.
Yep.
It's tried and true. That's what works. I mean, you want a new car. You just dump some money in somebody's lap and say, "Here's your new car." You don't have the same appreciation for something as if you've worked for it, and
sure.
you've put all that time in labor. You take better care of it. You have, you understand the value of it. A little offshoot here. The first, probably second year that we had our orchard, my dad, probably we used to go move the old irrigation pipe. People who used to do that would know what I'm talking about. You take them and unhook them and move them.
Yeah,
the
I
next
got yelled
row.
at a lot for going too fast.
Yeah, well, but other than that, the first job that my siblings and I had were out in the orchard was propping the trees, and you had to go out there and put those and it was kind of a little bit of an art too, because you saw this branch like, okay, I'm going to need a 12-foot prop, and you had those big starking trees that you had to make sure the props weren't out in the middle of the row, but up under the.
So you can still mow.
So you can
and-
still mow and spray and that. But that first year, this was probably 1976 or something like that. We propped the orchard. It wasn't big, or 8 or 9 acres, but may as well have been 800.
Now, put in perspective, you get like an old, big, golden 50 by 50 planting. You get
Yeah.
2 or 3 bins of tree.
Yeah. Some of them you did.
That's crazy.
But that first year, I'll never
Seedlings.
forget the lesson. My dad paid each of us $20. That was what we got for propping the orchard, $20.
$20, yeah.
And I remember laughing with
lot of
Dad
money.
later years and saying, you were exploiting us for child labor, and he laughed, and he goes, no, I wanted you guys to understand the value of hard work and what you earned. And of course, $20 in 1976 was a lot more
Yeah,
than
it
$20
felt like a
now.
lot.
But I remember getting that $20 thinking, I may as well have had a gold bar. I mean, literally. And I used that or saved some of it, whatever. But I've never forgotten the lesson. And it was, that I learned that, okay, you work hard, and I understood, okay, you've got to work hard to. I mean, the years I worked at Campbell's, for the 4 or 5 summers I worked there, was $3 an hour, back in the 80s or whenever that was, It was-
Ooh, were you on the veranda?
no, I worked outside. I took care of the pool, so I was a pool boy.
That doesn't sound quite as fun as the veranda. That seemed like
it was fun.
Was it?
Beard beach bikinis.
but in a different way.
That's why I developed the getting up early thing. I'd get there at 5:30 or so in the morning and have to clean all the pools and vacuum. That was the old days, when they had the vacuums you plugged in and used
Old
the pole.
days,
Yeah,
I have a
still
pool
have,
and I plug it in.
Yes.
Yeah,
I don't have a machine.
yeah.
I plug it in and I just zen
but
out.
it was the same kind of thing. I mean, I would get there at 5:30 in the morning and I'd have the job set out that I would have to do there, and it was like it was just hard work. I just did the work.
It makes me laugh because my dad took me down to Cats and Jammers on the beach.
Oh, and the restaurant was here.
And he got the owner out. I've told the story a lot, but Bill Margetich was the owner of the restaurant, and I was probably 12. And he goes, he thought something had gone down because what's this cowboy out front, Cats and Jammers kind of a party place.
Right.
And
your dad had his cowboy hat on, right? Didn't he?
Drove the green Ford pickup down there, and he goes, "Hey, I need to talk to the owner." And the guy comes out, and he goes, "My son needs a job. He's too slow in the orchard." and so the guy goes, "How old is your son?" And he goes, "How old does he need to be?" And he goes, "It's Indian land, right?" So he's like, tribal. He goes, "All right, if you're cool with it." Oh, so I started washing dishes, and the reason it reminded me of what you were saying, I always thought, because when I'd get done cleaning, the downside, my dad had to pick me up at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning.
What were you, 11, 12 years old?
Yeah, 12, 13, something like that. So he'd have to go, and I'd go to work at 4, get off at 2, and I'd have to wash dishes and clean the restaurant the whole time, and everybody's partying, and I saw way too many things I shouldn't have seen at 12 and 13.
That was a fun place to work.
But then I'd get out and I'd walk across the street and I'd be so greasy. I'd jump in the pool and all the grease would come up. And I go, I bet this pool guy is really frustrated every morning.
There were some things I saw in the pools there that were like, I
You
get
could
down
have
there
jumped in the lake,
morning.
giving the guy a break.
I kind of had this cat and mouse thing with the pool guy.
Yeah.
He didn't know what was coming from.
That's funny.
There's so much chlorine in this pool. What's going on?
Yeah.
So anyway, back to what you were saying.
Yeah.
So it gets serious pretty quickly, like a serious topic pretty quickly for you, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And then people describe how it happened. Did people start gravitating towards you? Did you?
Well, I think it's okay to share, right? So in December of 2020, things had really picked up because of COVID. And so it had gone, you've seen the Because You Matter signs. They ended up somehow
There's one out front.
Yeah, kind of going viral. They ended up back in Florida. They ended up, even overseas in Austria, they were doing something with it. And it was just right place, right time kind of thing. And so I came to our oldest son, Luke, and he had just gotten done with his MBA. And I was like, he has a little more time, even though he was a dad of 2. I was like, And so I said, I am a dreamer, a visionary, creative. I have these ideas, but when it comes to strategic planning, mission, values, vision, all that, I'm like,
You lost me.
Yeah. And so I said, would you ever commit to 5 hours? I don't know if I said a month or a week or something. He was working remotely for Special Olympics at the time, and they lived next door. And I said, I don't have any money really, but I could figure out how to pay you something a little. And he came back and he said yes. And then they found out they were pregnant with number 3 the same week, I think. And then he came in January, and then we had a consultant that actually donated her time and came in for a 2-day thing. And by the end, she's like, Luke, you kind of fit the role of executive director a lot more than your mom. And I was like, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so then fast forward to March of that year is when Cade lost his life to suicide. And then Nate
2
3
suicides
weeks later was 16 in Pateras.
2021,
And that was really, that really hits home. It was
tough.
Pretty shocking.
Yeah.
Very tough. Yeah.
From the outside looking in, you're wondering probably what.
Yeah.
Is that probably all these stories and all these families that you probably are aware of now, looking back at since you started? Is it one of the eye-opening experiences where you think everything's great, and it's not?
Yeah.
Whatever's going on in someone's head, maybe not reflected in how they're acting.
Right.
They're pretending they're happy, or they're on social media and they're happy.
Right.
but they're deep. There's something going on, and is that part of the awareness campaign?
So, I mean, a lot of people, because of that, associate only 7 seconds with suicide prevention, which, you know, as I shared earlier, it was more of like, I just wanted to be a reminder to check in on people, whether or not it's, or taking the 7 seconds to say, hey, I really need some help, or I, you know. Both ways, yeah. And so, you know, it really never was supposed to be about suicide prevention, but because it was very tightly associated with both Kate and Nate, I think that that's kind of, especially locally, kind of how people have looked at it. But from that, what has happened is, I mean, it deeply impacted our family. Like it was pivotal for our entire family, and we had red T-shirts under our roof. I mean, it was
so
just
many
it was just a crazy time, a really hard time. And that's when Luke will say to me to this day, he goes, that's when it went from here, you know, from head to heart.
Yeah.
And he knew at the end of the year that he wanted to step away from Special Olympics and put his whole heart into only 7 seconds. Like, he just knew that, you know, if it could,
That was last year?
save one. No, this was 2021.
2021.
Yeah.
So he came on board full time. He stepped away from. It was a huge leap of faith.
Huge leap of faith. Holy
Running
Spirit thing
running
on that.
running a nonprofit is not for the faint of heart, because you just don't know. And he's got 3 kids. Yeah, and
it's heavy on the non-profit.
Yeah,
yeah,
and you just don't. And there's no
yeah.
consistency. Like, you just don't know from year to year if you're going to have private donors that are, or if a grant is a 1-year thing. So it's, as a mom, I'm like, what did I get you into? Sometimes it's actually kind of weighty.
He's done an amazing job.
He's done an amazing job.
Yes.
But when both Kate and Nate passed away, we had schools locally and even across the state that came and said, do you guys have a curriculum that can be implemented into school?
Oh my gosh.
That is not a suicide prevention curriculum, because they wanted something that was more all-encompassing. And, you know, the whole point was, is if you can address loneliness, that's kind of a precursor to all the other things. That's a precursor to depression,
Drugs.
anxiety, eating disorders, drugs, addiction, all of that. And so if you can tackle loneliness through encouraging intentional connections in your life, it can really help.
And probably not just children either. Probably
Everybody.
those children
Everybody.
see their parents.
Everybody.
That's kind of where that
Yes.
pivot.
And
Yeah.
so
happened
cool
with-
that you had done homeschooling.
Yeah. But what's funny though is, like, I laugh because Luke never went to public school, but now his whole life is really geared toward
doing
public schools, which is so,
presentations
and he loves it. He does school assemblies, and there's been a school curriculum. There's a scientific advisory committee.
Is it everywhere?
God.
You said
Yes,
earlier that
everywhere.
it's in the country.
Yeah, and we actually have board members back in New York and in Florida, and so
Guys.
it's become nationwide. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Luke actually just
amazing.
just got back from New York.
What are the biggest, or 2 things? Like, what's the next goal or continued mission, and then also, what are the challenges right now for that?
Well, I
organization?
found out that founders should never stay part of it, and so I stepped away in November of 2023. I think that was my last. And I said, I just want to be Luke's biggest cheerleader and be mom. I don't want to be part of all the stuff. And so I stepped away. There are 5 full-time staff. Their office building or office spaces are in the community center currently.
Yep.
And so I'm not really directly involved anymore. So it's kind
I
of.
I asked if Luke could come when he's out of town.
Oh, Luke!
Yes.
Luke would be great on here. He's fantastic.
We'll get him back.
Yeah.
He's a really good interview.
I've talked to him, and then I introduced Raja to him, and Madhu.
Right.
yeah.
That's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
that's how.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the greatest challenge is the sky's the limit with it. It's really being held back by funding.
The
I mean, that's
funding
really
is
honestly.
yeah.
If there was the money available, they would have 10 employees tomorrow, because there's that much need.
Yeah, you'd think of all the grants they have. Yeah. Like, this would be one that would be a no-brainer.
And there have been some. They just hired a staff. They got a Murdoch, but I think it's a 1-year.
Grant
Don't quote
thing.
me. I don't.
Yeah.
It's a 1-year thing, and
Yeah.
so. But it's been very amazing to watch
So
how it's all.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you tell me about the wins, like some of the wins you've had?
Oh.
Like I mean, I don't know what level of detail, and I don't even know really what I'm asking you.
Yeah, Russ, what are you asking?
Because I don't know, is it an individual or
Right.
is it
No, I think it's
prevention?
I think it's when Luke comes to me after a school assembly as a mom, because I see the weight that he carries of, now he's got the weight of the staff that he wants to make sure that they're
taken
employed
care of.
and and when you're a smaller organization, you kind of have to fit roles that aren't necessarily your strengths because there's limited staff.
Sure, you got to do it. Do it
Yeah,
all.
yeah, and they're amazing. But I think the win for me is when Luke comes home from a school assembly with one story, like one connection that he's had where, a 14-year-old boy cries on his shoulder for 45 minutes and shares his story. And Luke asked, why did you feel comfortable coming to me? He goes, well, I saw your booth, this is a small town. I saw your booth over at state basketball, and I went up to your booth at state basketball, and then I saw it again the next year. And then this young man, I just don't know how much I'm at liberty to say, but this young man had lost someone very close in his life to suicide, and at the age of 10. And he had just built up walls for 4 years, and it was the first time that he felt like he had a safe person to talk to.
Oh.
And so Luke doesn't
Those
do
are
this.
beautiful
So Luke
moments.
gave him his phone number and said, I want you to call me anytime you're having thoughts. And he said, and I want you to know I have a almost 10-year-old son that in 4 years will be 14. And he goes, I want to introduce you to him when you're 18 and he's 14.
That's great.
And so just giving him that purpose of
Goalpost.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's funny that you said safe place, and it's funny that his dad's been doing that for
Right. That's
grown
what I
men.
was thinking.
Yeah.
You
that's right.
see grown men, our age, not a lot of counselors
No.
in the world.
No.
We're talking to.
No.
But we'll talk to John. And it's funny that your son now has adopted
Yep.
that same heartfelt
And
openness.
don't you feel like this part of their story reminds you of Carl?
Carl Word.
Good old Carl.
Carl.
Yeah, he was one of our guests.
Carl's been a big part of.
Yeah.
He was very
Is
emotional
it
about
really
it.
that? I mean, that
Yeah.
really sounds like his mission in life.
Yeah.
too.
He was
He's
a,
terrorist.
He's
too.
got the biggest heart. I'm like, if we had cloned Carl,
he was a huge cheerleader and promoter of Only 7 Seconds.
And the
Huge.
fire.
And the
And
fire.
the kids. And the kids.
He just
and
has
the
It's
such-
always about the kid.
he has such a heart for kids. It's incredible.
You should watch the podcast. It's
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
emotional. He's
Yeah.
Yes.
there's some that's been cool to watch people open up.
Remember that snowstorm that I insisted on driving down to work a couple years ago? I woke up in the morning and there was like 2 feet of snow overnight or something like that. Remember that?
No.
Yeah, and I got up and I said, I'm going down to the office.
And I probably was
you're
like, please don't.
And you're like, this is going somewhere. So I get in my Jeep. I think my Jeep can go anywhere. I'll make it down there, because we live, 2 minutes up the Met House. So it's a 20-mile drive to my office. And so I told her, I said, listen, if I get down to the intersection there on 97 and it's really bad, I'll just turn around and come back up the valley. And so I got down there and there is literally, it's like 6 in the morning. I leave early in the morning. There's nobody.
Probably more like 5:30.
Nobody on the road. And there's like, they plows, and I had my Jeep in second gear and 4-wheel drive, and I made it all the way down to Chelan here. And I don't know how Carl found out that I had come down here. I don't know if you had talked to him earlier or later in the day or whatever, but sometime during that day, he leaves a message on my office phone. John, what in the hell are you doing coming down here? He'll probably remember that, but it was just, I was like, yeah, I made it. I mean, I called her, I got there, I said, I'm here. So,
That's
yeah,
great.
it was pretty funny though. He just, that's
Well, that's
Carl,
great.
That is Carl.
I know
Yeah.
my daughter's talked to me about this in her patients. You must feel a lot of pressure when people are in need and in pain, and you need a day off, want a day off. There must be that you have to kind of balance that with your own life and your own kids.
I do,
and grandkids.
and it was harder. I think you would agree. It was harder for Kristin to see that when we were younger, and I'm just trying to. I'm trying to work to make a living, and
build a
in
business.
addition to making a life and providing for my family and taking care of my patients. And you even said you have a better understanding of that now.
It took me
Yeah.
until just recently, honestly,
To
to
see
understand.
yeah.
Because as a mom,
Yeah.
You're in the thick of, and it's interesting because we're at this stage of life we're watching our kids do this.
Do that.
And I'm watching my daughter-in-law with my son who's, gone working all the time. And I'm watching her raise her 3 kids. I'm like, this is hard. And I think I have a greater appreciation. Of course, hindsight's when I have a way greater appreciation. And it's not, for him, it's not a job. It's his,
like I said, it's a ministry.
He
It's
loves
like-
he loves his patients.
do.
Like that's just,
You saw it
that's
earlier. It's emotional.
Yeah, all of them. I mean, and I see people from,
all walks
of life. I've had a few people ask me. They said, "Would you ever be like to be a chiropractor for, like a professional sports team or like a athletes or whatever?" And I've had a few of them in the office, as patients over the years, just individually. But because I remember one year back in the day, it's been a number of years ago, there was a picture, and it was from, I actually had cut it out. I think it was from USA Today or something. It was I had it on my bulletin board there, and it was a picture of Tiger Woods when he was at the peak of his career, and he's standing there, and of course I think he had a lot of back problems, a lot of golfers do, but he's standing there and in the picture and on the green, like sizing up a putt or something, and standing next to him is a guy with holding an ice pack. I think it was an ice pack on his back, and said, "This is Dr. So-and-so, his personal chiropractor." And I was like, how does a guy get a job like that? But then I've had people ask me, would you do something like that?
You'd be so bored.
And I I don't think so. It goes back to what I'm doing now.
And you'd be away from your family.
I would be away from my family, and I truly love my patients. I mean, I love the people I see every day, and it's just just having life with them like that. I do.
So,
Yeah.
like, you're kind of saying when you were younger and having the babies, and he's gone working all day.
Oh, yeah.
You're like not quite as understanding as now. You could look back and say, "Oh,
You understand why? Yeah.
Yeah, not that it was easy. I mean,
And not that I didn't want to be with
Right.
my wife and kids more.
Right.
It was
Right.
and especially you would understand. When you're self-employed,
You're about 2 decisions away from being out of business.
Exactly.
At all.
you're
At
exactly
all.
exactly
I think
right.
Men,
Yeah.
I think
It's-
men, honestly, some men are kind of silent sufferers.
Yes.
In a way that we overlook.
Yeah, I totally agree.
That they, would love to be at home doing
Yeah.
stuff with their family more. But then there's the responsibility and the life conditioning of
Waiting.
I need to work and
Yeah.
provide
Yeah,
and
it's
do
true.
this and
It's-
that and the
yeah.
other
Yeah.
thing, and
and it's different. It's different if you have a 40-hour week, 9 to 5 or 8 to 5.
Self-employment adds a whole
It-
level.
Yes, it
is.
does.
It's a whole different
and
thing. Yeah.
somebody has to do it,
Yeah.
I mean,
right?
think,
I mean, somebody has to be paying the mortgage or
we had
Yeah.
Fletcher.
contributing in that way. It's
Yeah.
not easy.
true.
Nope, it's
Yeah.
not.
We had Fletcher Ellingson here yesterday, and we were talking. He's got an episode, and we were talking about. You think about it, like those guys in World War II, what they saw, and they came back and said, "Okay, everything's good again.
Yeah.
Go to work."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't
And their counselor was
imagine.
named Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't have
Yeah.
only 7 seconds or
Yeah.
mental health.
Well,
And then
They
mental
didn't
health
have a
wasn't even a thing. They
chiropractor.
didn't have
Yeah.
a
They didn't have a-
yeah.
No.
Yeah.
They maybe
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
a few minutes in the barber chair if their
Yeah.
wife wasn't cutting their hair.
You know,
Right.
and then their dads,
I
and
know.
my dad's dad died in front of him when he was 8. So
Oh,
Yeah.
so they did best they could. But I love what you said, Terry. I just read a quote not that long ago. It said something like, "There's men like that." Like, and I would put myself in that way a little bit. Don't try to like solve the burden. Just recognize it
Yeah.
and understand why it's there. But when you try to change it or fix it or take it away, the burden is part of it, of who identity was, part of the identity. And so it is the responsibility, and that's like the set mind that we have.
Well,
And
it's not new.
not
I mean,
new,
this is
no.
caveman stuff.
it's knuckle draggers. We're like 2 inches away
It's
from
not.
the
I mean, it is. It's not just like
Yeah.
conditioning from the war
So
or
you're saying, well,
conditioning
that's-
from
haven't changed a lot.
Yeah.
Gotta make a fire tonight or we're
Yeah.
gonna die.
I'm
right.
going to Alaska in a couple of days.
Yeah.
This is why we have fight or flight. I
Yeah.
mean, this
yes.
is. It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly.
So anyway,
Yeah.
I want to get back to what you were saying about, and hopefully people will listen to this podcast. How do they is it only7seconds.com?
Yep. And it's a number 7. Yeah.
Number 7,
Yeah.
only
number7seconds.com.
and they can learn all about it. They can
Yep.
donate there.
Yep.
There's probably, they can call Luke.
Yeah.
Go to the community center
Or
and
the community
see
center.
them at the office.
Yeah.
when
Or
they're
they
there in
can
the office.
just take time to check in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
with
that would be my
people,
biggest
or
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ask for help,
Yeah.
or ask for connection,
Yeah.
or just
Well, and it's
Yeah.
funny,
Yeah.
you could take that to so many different places,
Yeah.
you know, gratitude. Just take 7 seconds to be grateful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, gratitude, I always say gratitude is the one thing that can assassinate anxiety.
They say scientifically that gratitude and anxiety cannot be in your
Can't
brain.
coexist.
It can't
They
coexist in your brain.
Yeah.
well, and the
Which is-
alternate to that we leave out often, I do as well, is apathy.
Yeah.
There's two roads to go down in that moment where you're feeling overwhelmed, and it's anxiety or apathy. And
Stuff.
I think we forget apathy a lot. Kind of gets left out, but a lot of people live there in that. What can I do anyway?
Yeah.
There's no
Yes.
point.
Yep.
I'll just
Well, and
scroll
then you
more.
numb out, and then you
Yeah.
numb out on Netflix.
Either
and
way.
you- Yep.
Netflix, drugs, alcohol,
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
crutch you think you need. Yeah.
Well, that's been, so I want to get back to a couple. You have 2 more kids. I know your daughter's a photographer
Yep.
in town. What's her business name?
Emily Moeller Photography.
Emily Moeller, Moller.
ER, yep.
ER.
Yep.
Okay. And then what are the other 2 up to?
Isaac, our third child, he and his wife are in Battleground.
Oh, that's my favorite place.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
All
where
the thrift stores. Right?
That's where I lived.
Yeah.
That's where I lived all during
Yeah.
my divorce and
Yeah.
COVID,
Really?
and my mom dying and my grandma dying. That's my family
Oh.
farm is in Battleground. That's
So
where my
her-
dad was. It's my favorite place on earth.
I know. The
So-
thrift stores are awesome.
So
I
Ellie-
know.
Ellie-
I'm going there next week.
They're gonna go see
Yeah.
get her grandma.
Okay, all right.
fixed
So
for the-
sorry.
Yeah.
That's all right. Yeah. for
I
the-
love it there.
Yeah. No, Ellie, Isaac's wife, her family is in Hawkinson, which is
No,
Right-
I know. I'm
right
right,
down
with
there.
you
Yeah.
because why?
So-
Because
Beautiful.
Hawkinson was kind of created off
Yeah.
of my. We live in Brush Prairie.
Okay.
that's where
yes, that's where
yeah,
they live.
Yeah, her parents are right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you know where the 2 metal silos are, right
Yeah.
on the road,
Yes.
that's my farm. That's my family farm
What's it? Is there a name?
on 167th.
Yeah.
No?
It was right by. Anyway.
So
So
the
there's a
little-
milk house and
Yes.
2 metal silos.
So the little
Aw.
church there at the intersection, there's an auto
In
body
Hawkinson?
In
Yes.
Hawkinson.
Yeah.
That's-
that
they were
church,
married in
Isaac
that
and Ellie were
church.
married in that church.
So that Lutheran church.
This one was it? No, it's just Hawkinson Community.
Community
Oh, that
church.
one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because her grandpa was the pastor there, and then he retired, but he
So
married
my
them.
mom was
Yeah.
like a lifetime jazzercise instructor. So when I lived there, I started going jazzercise to find like community and get
Yeah.
myself doing something,
Yeah.
and it's right there.
Yeah.
That's yep.
Let's see.
So they
That's
just
awesome.
they just bought a house down there
As of last night.
Yeah, they're literally, and so they're they have 3 kids.
With one on the way.
Oh my gosh,
or
or
2,
two.
yeah,
so
depending.
great.
Yeah, so they're and he has a job. He works at the Northwest Gospel Church. Is that the
Yeah, it's a big, huge
church in Vancouver. He's like the facilities
Manager.
for and all their properties. And it's pretty extensive.
cool.
And then he does search and rescue on Mount St. Helens. He's
Oh
involved
my gosh,
with
On
that.
the volcano
Gifford
rescue
Pinchot
team.
is
He's kind
so
of
amazing.
I think if he that's a volunteer thing. I think if it was something if it was a paid gig, I think he'd do it full time because he's kind of got that
Yeah, he
adrenaline.
loves
Yeah.
it.
Well, it's
He's
funny
been
that
he went
this-
snowmobiling inside the like,
In the
crater.
he's been in the
and-
crater, you know.
Oh, I love
yeah,
it.
he's
I love
done
it.
all
I
that.
hate it.
up
As a
there.
mom?
I
Yeah.
love it up there. Okay, so now are
So-
they homeschooling or are they?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
It's
And-
funny when I was coming to, just to interject this,
Yeah.
I heard they found the young lady up in Orville today that went missing 5 months ago.
I saw that.
Yeah, and it's funny, I was coming to talk to you today, and I was like, well,
Wow.
these things are alive and well.
Yeah,
Everywhere.
yeah.
I don't know what happened, but
Yeah, Isaac's been involved in a lot. He's been involved in
He's been in a
rescues
lot.
and recoveries, I think, with his
Yeah.
That's why I think
work there.
trauma counseling is
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah.
No kidding.
So,
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's in. So it looks like they'll be there, you know, for the
We're
duration.
sad,
yeah, but it's they're
It's good for them.
they're in a good
Yeah.
place. It's
and
great.
that's fun
yeah,
for you guys.
Yeah.
Never
It's a
say
fun
never.
place to go.
It
Yeah,
is.
I know. Yeah.
It's a fun place
Yeah.
to go.
they're
And
there
then-
until they're not there.
And then Ethan, you can talk about
Ethan-
Ethan, our youngest. He's the the one that was responsible for
Sparked
only
it all.
7 seconds.
Yeah.
And yeah.
He's like, he's a great kid. He always says, "Mom, I know I'm your favorite." And I'm like, "Nope." He genuinely thinks that. So if you're watching this, Ethan,
Yeah.
and I said they're all my favorites. But he was one of those kids. He graduated
Early.
COVID.
Yeah.
He graduated a year early during COVID, and then he had his master's at 20, which is crazy.
Wow.
And then he is actually a school teacher at Cedar Park Christian in Bothell,
my
and
gosh.
teaching 8th grade English and leadership and Bible. And he doesn't actually really enjoy it. And so he is...
How old is he
I
now?
hope
Trying
he's
to-
He's 22. He is.
Okay.
just turned 22.
Yeah, he's ordained as a pastor, and he's going to be associate pastor starting at the end of the school year. He's already doing some of that, but he will be.
We talked about this where he was volunteering.
Well,
He's been,
he's been involved with the worship at the church and the church that they were going to in Mill Creek,
Mill
right?
Creek, yeah.
They
We
did a
talked about this.
church plant in Ballard area,
I think they're, yeah.
and so he's going to be the associate pastor at that church.
Yeah.
And so this will be his at the end of the school year. He'll be done teaching, so he's going to be full time
Yeah.
at the church starting. And Erica,
His
wife, is a photographer too.
She's a photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they live over in Bothell, and they are as of now, they are the fun aunt and uncle to
Yes.
all the grandkids
Yeah.
because they don't have
Yeah.
kids. So, of course, all the grandkids think Ethan
Yeah.
and Erica are just the
Coolest.
they're the fun,
And we were talking a little bit about
great.
the work
Yeah.
ethic and that different, and I think that it's such a, I don't know, this is one of those things I think about and I don't know what the answer is, but it's like, work, and very little rest and play. I mean, and so there's negative to that. And then you have the pendulum shift of over here of play. And I feel like Ethan and Erica have, and they're both they're much, they went through COVID.
yeah.
And they were at that peak time of their life shut down. So they didn't get to go eat out. They didn't get to do anything. They didn't get to travel, everything. And so I'm watching them in a really beautiful way, embracing life.
That's
doing
awesome.
the things that
They are.
Yes. And I see
Yeah.
their older siblings being like, oh, I could learn something from that.
Oh,
And so I do think that there is something about fully embracing. And so they make,
Yeah, I think they've traveled more in the last 6 months
Than we have in our whole marriage.
We traveled in at least the first 15 years of our
20.
marriage. Yeah.
But it's really
I mean, it's great, but it's just that they don't have kids either. So
Yeah,
that kind of,
right.
but they're
Well, and
they're-
photography
yeah.
opens
Yeah.
doors for destination
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And so it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wasn't it
That's
interesting
cool.
to see, especially when you're younger, but when you go through something like he had pneumonia,
Yep.
that's a horrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
At the
Yeah.
time, that's a crisis.
Yeah.
But it leads to education. It leads to experience.
you
It
learn
leads to
something.
wisdom.
Yeah.
It leads,
Needs
it leads
to
you down a
only
path.
7 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
You never know.
I told my son this too. He had broke his tibia and his fibia and dislocated his ankle in a football. Central Washington. He was a pretty good football player in high school, and lost his junior year during the summer. It snapped everything, so he was out for all sports for a year, and then he came back. And then when he went to the Marine Corps, he got hurt, and he was in reconnaissance training, and he got hurt. But it just stacks. He learned how to get over this one, and then life's going to hit you again. Like nobody's immune. So
Right.
and so it's like this understanding that when you get knocked down, you get up or you just lay down. I mean, and these lessons sometimes, hopefully, they're 20 days in bed and not worse.
Yep.
And hopefully you move on, and hopefully you take it and run with it. But it's
What-
not easy.
So a little memory that's popping up is that when my grandma died and I was living in their farmhouse, I was helping my aunt go through all the stuff. And my grandpa lost his hand when he was 13.
There you
And they told him at the time, well, if you lose a limb, you only live till you're in your 20s.
go. Jeez.
So
And you're named Lefty.
that's kind of was an,
Another one of
Bad
those
joke.
things.
we
we're
called
led
it a
to
stump.
believe
There's
that it's
plenty
not
of jokes.
true.
We're all over it.
All right.
Anyway, he grew up with that mindset.
Right.
And
I'm going to die when I'm 25.
Right,
Yeah.
right. He was like
Yeah.
living wild a little bit.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I found in their bedroom closet was this old manila envelope that had a bunch of little cards that all of his classmates had written him and sent home.
There you go.
Oh, because he obviously had to stay home for a while after
That's
that
cool.
accident.
Yeah.
And I think now,
Yeah.
I bet that really was something that that meant a lot to him when he was a little boy.
Sure was.
And I love that.
You
Yeah.
know,
And then what happened after your Mama Bear rant? Did people reach out to Ethan? I mean, did it?
Well, I didn't want to hurt his friend's feelings,
Right.
right? And so I literally, had him over and I said, you know, I love you. But, and actually one of his closest, he's still close with a couple of them. But one of them literally apologized. Said, "I am so sorry. I didn't." He goes, "I
They
literally."
didn't even think about it. What
he's
didn't
like,
cross
"I
their
did
minds?"
just-" He was
Yeah,
like,
kids
and I
are-
said,
yeah.
I
Around.
totally
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
How many
So
times
Not
do you do
trying
that
to
as
make you
an
feel
adult?
bad.
no,
Just.
yeah.
But there
Yeah.
was a positive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And then what was cool is a year after that, we had the Because You Matter T-shirts, and they all of his teammates wore purple and gold, and that said Because You Matter, and they all embraced the whole thing, and it was really cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool
I
how
love
it-
that.
How it
Yeah.
shifted back.
Yeah.
You know,
I love
one of
that.
the things you said, Russ, about the, with your son and the hits, that you bounce back from. And one of the things that when you're younger, you don't think about, you don't know what you don't know, like you said, and you don't. But as you get older, you learn how wise your parents were in a lot of ways, and you learn some things as you parent that you don't want to do that your parents did. Not that it was bad; it was just maybe different. But my dad, the older I've gotten, he was very wise.
He was.
And both my parents were. But
I knew your dad pretty well, actually.
Yeah, they were. Back in the 70s, they were ahead of their time. They were so into like health foods and stuff because my
Oh my
mom got
gosh.
sick.
Things
and
that we consider conspiracy
yeah,
theories that
they
really
were,
aren't.
they're
And they
it's
do.
common
This is my
stuff. and
mother.
They were
my
way
mother.
they were
I
way
thought she
ahead
was
of.
so weird.
Yeah, but I thought. I remember sometimes thinking my parents were, "What? This is
Like, can
not
I
like
just
all the other
get
parents."
a normal lunch,
Yeah,
please?
yeah.
Seriously.
But
Can I
Dad,
get normal food?
Dad, one of the things I remember him saying was, he goes, with regard to taking a hit, and that he goes, one of the things he always said is, that's the worst hit you take in your life, you'll be lucky. That was
Oh,
depending
yeah.
on. But he said, a lot of employers will ask young men if they ever played high school football, and I said, why? And he goes, they want to know if you can take a hit and get back up.
Yeah. My dad was 99 pounds, I think, as a senior, and probably the toughest guy
on the team.
Like, he had a little chip on his shoulder from losing his dad in front of him.
Yeah.
So he was always kind of angry.
Yeah.
I had that grandpa.
Yeah.
Chip.
Yeah.
And I think when I grew up, football was my favorite sport. I played a little bit of college basketball, but football I loved, especially 8-man football. That was like backyard.
Yeah.
That was the greatest thing ever.
Running gun.
A
Yeah.
lot
And
of
my
people
dad
don't
told me,
even
like,
know.
I was like 116. Small schools, you don't have enough kids.
Yeah.
So I'm starting a linebacker, and it was funny because I had one guy was a senior at 200 pounds and a stud, and I'm a sophomore at 116.
Yeah.
Guess how many fullbacks I met?
Yeah, probably most of them.
All
Yeah,
of them.
yeah.
And so my dad used to tell me, he goes, "Hey, here's the thing, you just got to hit them harder than they hit you, even if you go flying backwards.
Yeah, yep.
That's how you not get hurt.
Yeah.
Like, just
Yeah.
everything you got." And so that lesson of getting just beat up.
Yeah.
And back then there was no like concussion protocol.
No.
I mean, I tell this story a lot too. I was bull riding in an exhibition. I'm like 12, and the exhibition meaning we were riding bulls that we shouldn't have been riding.
Yeah.
I think it was Harlan Knowles' place up, just all like Sackett's and Roger Wools and my dad. And,
Like, let's throw young boys on bulls.
Yeah.
Full-size bulls.
yeah, with horns, and we're little, and they're just drinking and having a good time.
Oh, my gosh.
So I got hit in the head, knocked out. I woke up in the ER, so I'm out for like 20 minutes. And I wake up. I remember waking up, and my dad and the doctor's looking at me like, "Hey," and then he goes. He asked me the questions, how many numbers, where you're from.
Yeah.
So then he gets me up and he goes, "All right, I have a hell of a headache." And he goes, "So you want to go back and ride some more?"
That's
See, that's the difference. It's so different.
I was like,
No.
I don't think so.
Different, thankfully.
And he didn't make
In
me.
some ways,
he just
yeah.
didn't think about it. He's
Yep.
like,
Looks
Yeah.
like some
Excellent.
change I'm embracing.
Yeah.
I took a shot when I was a junior in football. We Chelan back in that day, Chelan was there was just a single A, double A, triple A, and B classifications in the
Right,
state, and
right.
Chelan was a A and a smaller A school because we had to play OMAC and Kashmir and Ephrata, believe it or not. To this day, I don't know how Ephrata managed to
They're
finagle
always
their
good.
numbers to stay because they just steamrolled. Ephrata played Oroville, for crying out loud. I was like, how is that right? Anyway,
Tough kids.
yeah, we went down there to play them, and I think it was my junior year. And the year before, they had beat us 60-0 here. I mean, I mean, I woke up Saturday morning, my arm,
Yeah.
we had like 7 sophomores starting, and I was 145, 50
Yeah.
pounds. I was just bruised everywhere. And the next year we went down there, and we were playing them tough, and it was like, I don't remember it was 12-7 or something like that in first half. And I remember keeping the ball on a option, and I cut around, and the linebacker came from my blind side on my back and speared me with his helmet. I mean, we watched the film the next week, and I remember, and I didn't even see him coming. I gained about 5 yards, and he hit me with his helmet. I mean, today it would have been targeting. I mean, that would have been,
Yeah.
and I just was like, you could see my body just go.
Then it was a great hit.
I literally went down. It was a great hit. Yeah. I remember getting up, and my dad always said, he goes, when I saw you take those hits, he's like, just get up, John, get up, and I
Yeah,
always
please.
did, but I walked to the opposite sideline. I didn't even know where I was, and so they got me off on our sideline, and
Oh my gosh.
and I think it was before halftime, and anyway, fortunately they didn't let me play the second half, even though I wanted to, but there was no concussion protocol
No.
at all. But I remember one of the things that I did, I got back that night, and I think it was 1 or 2 in the morning when we finally got home, and I went and saw my chiropractor that night, and he took x-rays, checked me over and everything, and I was back playing the next Friday night.
That's wild.
Kind of
Yeah, and
inspiration
I
for
remember
you.
when I was a sophomore. I remember writing my career paper on it when I was in high school. So I remember that was kind of
pretty pivotal.
It is.
that's why I got into chiropractic. People ask me that sometimes, but that when I started playing football, and Mom and Dad had both begun to go to the chiropractor, and they didn't know anything about it, believe it or not. At that time in the late 70s, it was not a thing. And I remember my dad telling a funny story. He said, I think he had just gotten elected to the county commissioner, and he slipped on the marble at the courthouse. It went at you, and he landed on his lower back, and somebody had told him, go see the chiropractor, and he's like, what the heck is that? He didn't even know.
It was so weird back then. I remember
Yeah.
I didn't want to tell
Yeah.
people that I went
told,
to one.
He told me,
No.
he goes, I honestly, John, he said, I looked up and down the street both ways to make sure no one saw me go in the door before I went in.
Yeah, it was a real...
Because he didn't know, and I'm like, well, now you got, but that kind of led to,
Yeah.
and I remember him and Mom having gone, they were like, this stuff really works, really has helped them a lot.
Yeah.
So then I remember starting when I started playing football, and that was kind of where I developed that.
Well, you've
but-
helped me a lot for a long time.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been almost
Right?
2 hours.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
been really that long. You said it would go fast.
Yeah, and really, I want to leave you guys with some stuff.
Yeah.
I want to tell you that I am really grateful to be your friend, and
Likewise.
appreciate you as people and your family and all that you're doing for so many people in so many ways, and your children and grandchildren. So it's like I'm very grateful to be here.
I'm grateful to be here because, I mean, I kind of know who you are, that you did photography and weddings and stuff, and I know you're the chiropractor, but, this is
Now
it.
you know.
I don't know,
Yeah.
it's been a beautiful stories, and thank you so much for openly sharing with the world,
Yeah.
essentially.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us. Yeah.
Only
Thank you.
7seconds.com. Donate your time and money, and talk to somebody about
Yeah.
their feelings,
Tell
how
somebody.
they're doing.
Yep.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Russ.
you
so
Thanks,
much.
Derek. Yep.
Yeah.